right, my friends, J.R. Dukes with you. Appreciate everybody joining me today. Big news day today. So we have to talk about this ongoing trial with former President Donald Trump. I do appreciate everybody joining me. Let's make sure everything's working real quick. If you haven't done so already, go ahead, drop your name in the chat, say hello, introduce yourself, let me know where you're from. Like to know where everybody's from. Generally, we normally have people from all over the world. It is definitely exciting, and I'm happy to be back with everybody. I know it's been a little bit of time, but I've been busy with other projects and making videos. I'm sure you'll all know about it. If you haven't done so, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. We're looking good on Facebook. All right, YouTube, Twitch. Looks like everything is going fine. All right. Everybody's starting to pile in right now. Looking great. Okay, just make sure everything's working. First thing we like to get out of the way. Now, I have to tell you straight up, well, I want to say hello to my friend Sapphire. It's good to see you. Thanks for joining us. And, of course, here we go, Yvonne. Thanks for joining. All righty, and my buddy Zach. Just like old times, right? Glad everybody's piling in. I like it. Come on in. We got lots to talk about. If you have any questions or comment, as always, please do not hesitate to put them in the comments below. Any questions you have, slide them in there, and we will get to them as we can get to them. All right. Obviously, a huge day today for former President Donald Trump. I'm sure you have all been following this crazy case the same way I've been following this case. I will tell you, I'm going to share with you exactly what I believe is going to happen as far as a verdict in this particular case. I think you may be surprised by what I expect to happen, but we'll see. I've been wrong before. I'm sure I will be wrong again. We have to hope that he's going to be fully acquitted, but we're going to talk about it and see what the realistic possibility of that is. You have to remember, in New York City, I think it's 88% of the registered voters in New York City, and that's, of course, where DA Alvin Bragg has brought these charges against former President Donald Trump. 88% of registered voters are Democrats. That just doesn't sound like good odds, if you know what I mean. You're supposed to be receiving a jury by a jury of your peers, and I don't think 88% being Democrats is what I would call a jury of my peers, but that is exactly what it looks like here. Let's see, Zach. All right, Zach, we appreciate you being here. Always enjoy having Zach. I see your comments all the time. I try to, if you subscribe to the channel, I think most of y'all know this. If you subscribe to the channel, I generally get to your comments first and foremost. Not only in this live feed, you have to be a subscriber in order to chat, but when you leave comments on the other videos, I try to prioritize them and get back to each and every one of you because I like to have a conversation. That's what this is all about. What a fantastic world, despite all the problems and challenges that we have. It is fantastic in the sense that we have this technology to come together, one big family. It's a different type of family, but a family of sorts, just the same. We can all meet, talk, express our views, try to understand what's going on. And remember, that's what my channel is all about here. It's all about indoctrination, stopping indoctrination. We have too much indoctrination going on today. We live in a world today where we're teaching girls to be boys, we're teaching boys to be girls. We're all confused. At least the mainstream media will lead us to believe we're confused as to who we are, what we are, whose we are. It's just absolutely insane. And I just can't take it anymore. And I have to speak out when I see this injustice going on. And that's what I'm all about. That's what this channel is all about, is helping each and every one of us make better decisions. I firmly believe that when you understand better, you can live better. I'm all about having that best life possible. So let's see. All right, Yvonne, always appreciate you guys being here. All right, let's go ahead and get into the first video. I want to talk about this briefly. This is actually a breaking news story pertaining to Justice Alito. You may or may not be aware. They are pressuring this guy big time to recuse himself of any and all Donald Trump cases. There's a big decision pending in the U.S. Supreme Court. It's hilarious as far as I'm concerned that they are even trying this nonsense, but I mean, they're desperate. They see the writing on the wall. They know things are not looking good for Joe Biden. So let's see what this is going to tell us, and then we'll talk about it some more. Here we go.
Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito says he will not step aside from cases related to the January 6th assault on the Capitol. Now, this is after dozens of House Democrats have called on his recusal. Let's bring in congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed right now, who is following this story that just came in. So, Nate, break down what he's saying about this.
Yeah, it's interesting. He pretty much takes absolutely no blame for a lot of these questionable flags flying above his house. There are two incidents, both uncovered by the New York Times in separate New York Times reports. One in the days prior to the presidential inauguration in 2021, which saw Joe Biden on the steps of the Capitol inaugurated as the next president of the United States. In that situation, there was a flag flying outside his house, allegedly, that was upside down and backward. While Alito did say that that flag was his family's, he did not accept any of the blame for it. The second situation was a flag that is from roughly the Civil War era. It says an appeal to heaven. It has recently, in recent years, been co-opted by Americans who believe that there should be more religion, more Christianity in the country. It's also flown notably outside the personal office of House Speaker Mike Johnson at the U.S. Capitol complex. In this letter back to congressional lawmakers, where Justice Alito says he will not recuse himself, a couple notable lines here. He tries to pin much of this on his wife. He says, quote, "I was not even aware of the upside down flag until it was called to my attention. As soon as I saw it, I asked my wife to take it down, but for several days, she refused." He continues, "My wife's reasons for flying the flag are not relevant for present purposes, but I note that she was greatly distressed at the time due in large part to a very nasty neighborhood dispute by which I had no involvement." He continues about the second flag seen at his vacation home. "My wife is fond of flying flags. I am not. My wife was solely responsible for having flags put up at our..."
Remember, there's two different controversies going on here with Justice Alito, allegedly controversies. The first one has to do with the upside down flag that you showed a picture of. And then more recently, they come up with some picture. I don't know how they get these pictures, but they pulled a picture out of the thin air or whatever. And the picture is what they call an appeal to heaven flag. I did a video on this particular flag, and basically the flag has a long history to the flag. I believe it was actually first flown by George Washington, but they always try to paint Republicans in a negative light. They always, well, let's be honest about it. A lot of times it's effective. And if you don't believe it's effective, I got two words for you. What was that guy, that New York guy, Santos, George Santos? Of course, Republicans take the bait, but when the shoe's on the other foot, like with Bob Menendez out of New Jersey, who, of course, is currently in trial for all types of treasonous types of activities involving Egypt, taking gold bars. I'm sure you're aware of these stories. Does he resign? Do they pressure him to resign? Do they give him some type of written censure? Of course not. Of course not. But they always seem to goat the Republicans into doing whatever it is the Democrats want them to do. And the result of that is obviously a one vote majority, a very slim majority currently in the House of Representatives.
Put our residence and at our vacation home, and has flown a wide variety of flags over the years. So he really tries to place this all on his wife, saying that she placed these flags up. He had even apparently asked her to take some of them down. I asked Senate Majority Leader Schumer a couple of weeks ago about his reaction to that, at least the appearance here of partisanship, given that that upside down backward U.S. flag flown on January 6th, typically was flown by people who believe the election was stolen. Here's what he told me.
Yes. Do you have concerns about the impartiality of Justice Alito in the wake of that New York Times report?
Look, I think what he did was really the wrong thing to do, and it casts some doubt on impartiality, and I'm discussing with Senator Durbin where we should go from here.
And we're still waiting to hear what the Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Dick Durbin will say about this letter, if he will say anything at all. The Democrat from Illinois, again, this is, just in the last couple of minutes that we've learned the outcome of this letter. Alito basically saying that he is not going to recuse himself, and pinning a lot of the controversy regarding these flags and the fact they were flying at both his personal home in Virginia and his vacation home in New Jersey.
Yeah, just the same old with these people. Just a whole lot to do about absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. Why do you think they're trying to pressure him off the case, the Supreme Court case? And for the individuals here who may not know, remember there is this case pending before the U.S. Supreme Court right now that can pretty well end all, if not most, of these trials. If nothing else, it will significantly delay the trials because they'll have to redo the indictments and there'll be all types of litigation. For example, let's just pretend that the Supreme Court comes back with a ruling that says there's not absolute immunity from a president, but there's qualified immunity, the same type of immunity that the police officers enjoy today. Also, just FYI, judges, for example, they have absolute total immunity for official acts as judge, period. So why shouldn't the president have that same type of immunity? Additionally, you got to remember the president already enjoys civil immunity. Remember back from Richard Nixon, and I believe there was a case in the 1980s. I can't remember the exact situation that was going on, but at any rate, they have had law effectively that you cannot civilly sue a president, and that's the way it's been for a long time. And of course, the justices wisely have said, especially Samuel Alito, the one they're trying to take off the case right now, they've said, hey, we need to protect the president. And Samuel Alito, I believe his comment was something to the effect of, we are writing a rule for the generations. He realizes this is going to be a ruling that is going to fundamentally protect the presidency for the rest of our country's duration. It's really just that simple. And folks, if they do not rule that a president has some type of immunity, it needs to be absolute immunity. Let's just say that they rule that he has some kind of qualified immunity. That will actually be good enough for now. But what's going to happen is in these particular cases, they're going to say, oh, well, what he did in Georgia, that wasn't an official act. And what's going to happen is going to have to work itself through the system again, all the way back up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court is going to have to decide each and every action. Is this a official act of the president, or is it not an official act of the president? That's sadly, that very, very sadly, that's what we're facing right now. So I hope they come back with a complete and absolute immunity, but I'm not really confident that that's going to happen. We're probably going to have a 6-3 ruling. It might be a 5-4 ruling. I know it's going to be in favor of the president. And again, that's why they're so desperate to get Samuel Alito off. He's probably one of the most conservative justices, if not the second most conservative, behind the one justice, the black guy. I'm drawing a blank. Sorry. If you know his name, put it in the comments below. I talk about him all the time. I love him. I can't say everybody shares that emotion, but it'll pop in my brain here in a second. But he's a very conservative justice, and that's good news for all of us, especially in this very perilous and serious time. Folks, if they don't rule this way, what's going to happen is effectively the deep state is going to take over the presidency. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, you're going to have a president always worried about a pair of handcuffs waiting for him when he leaves office. It's really just that simple. So you're going to have the presidency basically engulfed by the judiciary branch. And what I mean by that, the court system. These DAs, remember, there are approximately plus or minus 2,300 district attorneys, solicitors, individuals that can take a president when they leave office and file criminal charges against a president. So a president's going to really be at a disadvantage every time he does anything. If they don't rule that a president is protected, well, you may have Barack Obama facing trial for killing Osama bin Laden. He also has ordered the death of Americans overseas by drones. You can have George W. Bush face criminal issues for what he did in Iraq. You can have Bill Clinton face issues. I mean, there's all types of problems that are going to happen potentially if they don't get this right and protect the presidency. It's really that simple. Remember, hey, thanks, Zach. I appreciate that. Remember this, as far as even back in World War II, remember I think it was President Roosevelt at the time, he ordered these camps to be set up to put all the Asian Americans at the time in these camps. Now, today, that's unconscionable to think of. However, At that time, he did what he thought was best. And of course, by today's standards, he could be charged with all types of crimes. I would, off the top of my head, I'm thinking deprivation of civil rights. So it's really important, is my point, that they get this right. Now, I want to pivot over to President Donald Trump. We're going to talk about his case for the duration specifically. It's very important that we all get this correct and we understand this. Now, let me go ahead and put this up so that we can talk about it. I think this might help illustrate what's going on and how silly this entire case is right now. There is something called the Federal Election Campaign Act. We abbreviate it FECA. And don't worry, this is going to be brief. It's not going to be a very long, drawn-out type things. I did a video pertaining to certain facts on this, but I kind of just want to hit the highlights of this particular law and how they're weaving it. Essentially, you have Alvin Bragg. He's decided to take misdemeanors as far as inappropriate, allegedly inappropriate or wrong book entries. The two choices that a person has is they can label any particular expense as a personal expense, or they can label it as a campaign expense. This particular law will show you how Donald Trump could not win no matter what, how this is just a made up so-called crime. The theory is that Trump's payments to Daniels were campaign expenditures and thus needed to be publicly reported as such. By not reporting the expenditure, their theory goes, Trump prevented the public from knowing information that might have influenced their votes. You may recall that this prosecutor told the jury that had it not been for this alleged scheme, Donald Trump may never have been elected president in 2016. And of course, that's complete nonsense. What they failed to make clear to the jury, and of course, this Judge Merchant is in the pocket of the prosecution. I mean, it's really that bad. I can almost imagine in my mind this Judge Merchant looking at the defense and saying, hey, is the defense ready to put on their case? Yeah, the defense says we're ready. Okay, prosecution, are we ready to put on our case? I mean, really, it's that bad. I have never even heard of anything like this before. And I'm laughing, but I'm not laughing in a real way, because this is such a sad and serious situation for our country. And I want to give one other note, and that is I have seen this type of nonsense, but it's generally against smaller individuals that are not politically connected, that there's not this big, huge spotlight shining on the case. The reality in our country is if you fall out of favor, you make the wrong prosecutor mad, the wrong DA, the wrong solicitor, one of the deep state members, and deep state members include state officials. We call them administrators, or we call them secretary of this or secretary of that. These deep state bureaucrats, most of them are generally always unelected. These are the people that I refer to as the deep state, and these individuals generally engage in this type of behavior all the time. They don't like you. They're going to do whatever they can do, whatever they have to take you out. It just so happens with President Trump right now, it's so obvious. It's so obvious what's going on. Stevie Wonder can see what's going on. I mean, it's all over the world. It's a national embarrassment, a complete and utter disgrace what's going on, and we must all stop this. Moving on. There's one big problem with this theory. The payments to Daniels were not campaign payments. Now, I want to make sure you understand this. These monies that were paid to Stormy Daniels, this is the root of this case. President Trump called them what they were, personal expenses. Well, the prosecution is saying, oh, we need to throw this man in jail because these were not personal expenses. They were campaign expenses. And had he listed them as campaign expenses, then we would have known about this in time for us to make an informed vote. But there's a problem with that theory too. Had President Trump listed it as a campaign expense at that time, the disclosure forms they would have had to file showing this so-called hush money payment to Stormy Daniels would not have been filed until the following quarter of next year, meaning President Donald Trump would have already been President Donald Trump. It would have had no bearing on the election by any theory whatsoever, especially any and all theories put forward by the so-called, I call it, persecution. The FECA specifically prohibits the conversion of campaign funds to personal use, defined as any expenditure used to fulfill any commitment, obligation, expense that would exist irrespectively of the candidate's election campaign. Now, what does that mean? It means the following. If you are deciding to list it as personal or campaign, you need to ask yourself a question. If I wasn't running for office, would I still have this expense? If the answer is yes, I would still have the expense, then it's a campaign expense. If the answer is no, then it is a personal expense. And in President Donald Trump's case, it's clearly a personal expense because the number one factor, not the complete factor, the number one factor was he did not want his wife to find out. Let's just assume he slept with the porn star. I mean, imagine that. Can you imagine a man sleeping with a porn star? Oh my goodness. That's just unconscionable, isn't it? Just utterly ridiculous. At any rate, let's just assume President Trump slept with the porn star. I mean, let's be honest about it. We want him to be president. He's elected to be president. We didn't elect him Pope. We didn't elect him some ruler of some type of religious organization. He's president. He's a man. He's a red-blooded American, and we are all sinners. We all make mistakes. We don't always make the best choices. It's really just that simple. It's not illegal to sleep with a porn star. It's not illegal to have an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. It's not illegal to enter a conspiracy. By the way, they should have never been allowed to use that word because a conspiracy implies something illegal. And there's nothing illegal about influencing an election. We all influence the election. Every candidate influences their election. They want to do things that will more likely cause people to vote for them. So don't be misled by all this smoke and all this nonsense you hear, because it's just lies, half-truths, or outright distortions. The Federal Election Commission's regulations emphasize that the standard for determining if something is, quote, for the purpose of influencing an election is an objective one. We just talked about this. It is the nature of the expense, not the subjective intent of the candidate in making the expense, that determines if something is a legitimate campaign expense or an illegal personal use expense, meaning you can't claim it as a campaign expense. Trump had made these payments with campaign funds, and this is very important. It seems a near certainty he would now be facing criminal charges for knowingly and willful diversion of campaign funds to pay political obligations. Now, what does this mean? Well, it's the obvious. Let's just say President Trump would have called this campaign expense, and he paid the porn star with campaign funds. He would be in the same situation he's in right now, except it would probably be even an easier case for the persecution/prosecution, because clearly this is not a campaign expense. This is a personal expense. And another little side note, you got to remember, he asked his lawyer, licensed by the state of New York, to give legal advice and help guide people to make the right decision. Hey, how should this be listed? And the decision, following his lawyer's advice, aka the snake Michael Cohen. I love the way that defense attorney responded to what we should all call Michael Cohen, and it's not the goat, it's the gloat, the greatest liar of all times. I love that. That was just a perfect little zinger to throw in there. Zealous prosecutors could get a candidate coming or going. Falsification of records if campaign funds are not used, and illegal personal use if campaign funds are used. There is a no-win situation that former President Donald Trump could have been in this situation. I think it's very clear to each and every one of us, the entire intent, the entire thing going on here is election interference. They keep hammering President Trump that, oh, you're interfering with the election, you tried to stop it, the January 6th nonsense of this and that. Well, the reality is Joe Biden and his cronies, these woke Democrats, they are scared to death as to what's going to happen. They are afraid. They have been doing anything and everything they can to keep President Trump off the ballot, and now to keep President Trump from campaigning. They're trying to take the man's money away from him. They're trying to take his freedom away from him. They're trying to take his ability to campaign. They've even taken away his voice. Can you imagine that in the year 2024, I could actually look at you and say, hey, guess what? We would live at a time where a major candidate for president of the United States cannot speak to you about the thoughts on his mind. A presidential candidate could not tell you, cannot tell me what they really think in defense of a particular accusation made against them. It's just absolutely outrageous to think of this. What a disgrace. What a shame. What do you guys think about it? I mean, I'm tired of talking. Put it down so I can read it and you guys tell me what's going on. Let me switch to the comments here while we're on that subject. And let me take a quick peek at this. Yeah, Yvonne, what do I think there'll be a verdict today? No, they've already went home. There will not be a verdict today. Last time I listened to the news, the jury went home. They're going to start fresh 9 or 9:30 tomorrow morning, and we will see how that goes. I am going to tell you before we leave exactly what my impressions are as far as whether or not there's going to be an acquittal, a hung jury, or an outright conviction. And I will share that with you soon. Clarence Thomas. Yes. Thank you, Yvonne. Yes, that's exactly who I was thinking of. Appreciate the compliment, Zach. And let's see. Okay. My friend Sapphire. Let's see. I feel it's a verdict today. It will likely be guilty verdict because Judge Merchant has told the jury that any other crime qualifies as the second. Yeah, isn't that something? If it goes more than 2 days, I think you're exactly right. What Sapphire is saying here is what is just frankly another outrage of this particular case. And listen, I get a lot of people say, oh, well, the judge is doing this. It's improper. He can't get away with it. It will be reversed on appeal. The problem with that, folks, is that's not the intent. They know there's nothing here. They know this is illegal. They know this legal theory should have never went forward. That's the reason why the Department of Justice, the feds that actually govern election finance campaign, decided not to touch this case because this case is a nothing burger. This was something that this Alvin Bragg weaved together. It's a novel legal theory. And get this, imagine, just like Sapphire was saying, that you're on trial for your life. I mean, kid you not, everybody says, oh, he won't face jail time. He won't this. I don't believe that. I think if he's convicted, there's a real possibility of some type of jail time. Just mark my words. You heard it here first, and I stand by that. What I'm telling you is that you're on trial and you don't even know the crime that you have committed. That's exactly what's going on here. They're saying, okay, you mislabeled records pertaining to your business. Generally, that's a misdemeanor. And generally, this many years after the alleged incident, the statute of limitations is what they call it, which means after so many years, you cannot prosecute the case. Well, this Alvin Bragg, clearly under the instructions from the Biden administration or individuals that are higher up. And how do I know that Joe Biden is involved with this? Well, one of the main prosecutors is a guy named Matthew Colangelo. I don't know if you all have heard his name or not. He was working at the Justice Department for President Joe Biden. He left the Justice Department, went to New York, was working with Letitia James, hammering President Trump through this Engeron nonsense and on some other related matters. Then he left her office, went to Bragg's office, and guess what? Boom. Merchant has the case again of Donald Trump, and this same former federal official, which I believe is a current federal official, what we call a plant, is now in the middle of this whole thing. It's so clear. The fingerprints are everywhere. Matter of fact, Donald Trump, and we'll look at it here in a minute, was hammering on Truth Social. One of the reporters on Fox News, I was surprised because I was watching it live when it happened, that she would question President Trump's attorney in the way that she did and in the manner she did. She was just off her rocker, in my opinion. It just kind of crossed the line, but we'll take a look at that in a minute. The bottom line is, imagine you're being prosecuted for a crime and you don't know what the crime is. So you have the records that are allegedly mislabeled, but in order for it to be a felony, it has to have some type of campaign or some type of extra crime, is the way the law reads. In this particular case, the judge says, hey, y'all don't even have to agree on the crime. We're not going to tell you what the crime is. You figure it out. He actually told the jury that if someone thinks he was trying to do something illegal with his taxes, go with that. If you think it was something to do with hiding this or that, I mean, there's like 2 or 3 different legal theories that they could use, and they don't have to agree on it. Are you kidding me? Have you ever heard of anything in the United States on a criminal capacity to where the jury did not have to agree unanimously? That's what this judge said. Oh, and by the way, remember we talked about Justice Alito, and apparently his wife did something with these flags, and now they want him off the case. Well, look at Judge Merchant. His own daughter is just not a Democrat. She's a Democratic operative. She has made in excess of $93 million on behalf of Democrats. And her current client list, oh, none other than President Joe Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, and of course, Representative Adam Schiff, who is also running for senator out of California. And we all know what former President Donald Trump calls Adam Schiff, which of course I think is a more than fitting name for him. But that's exactly what is going on right here. You have on one hand, they're screaming, take him off this case. This is a terrible thing for a justice of the U.S. Supreme Court to do. Yet Merchant is conflicted at a minimum. He's corrupt to the core, in my opinion. And his daughter is a Democratic operative. But no, there's no reason for him to remove himself off the case. He has nothing to do with his daughter. Oh, I also have to mention that he also donated to Joe Biden's campaign. Now, of course, the woke liberal legacy media will say it was only $15 or whatever. It doesn't matter. He is a donor to the Democrats. He's donated to President Joe Biden. His daughter and him have been seen at Democratic events together. Of course, they're working in some type of collaboration. It's just as clear as day. It's really just that simple. All right, let's continue with these comments here. Judge Merchant told the jury what the FEC law said after denying. Yeah, this is another thing. You're on trial. You don't even know what you're on trial for, yet the judge will not even let the head of the FEC, who is the person in charge with enforcing these laws, show up in your defense to tell the jury, effectively, you've done nothing wrong. The judge said, no, I'm not going to allow that. Unbelievable. Every single time this judge could put his thumb on the scale, that's exactly what this judge has done. I've heard a reporter or reporters refer to it as, when it comes to the prosecution, the strike zone, yeah, it's like about this wide. When it comes to the defense, their strike zone is like right about that. And that's the truth. That's exactly what we witnessed, which is absolutely outrageous. Folks, I love our country. I love everything about America. This is not America. This is not the America that I know. And we have to do better than this. This is an absolute outrage. I'll have more comments on that coming later. All right, my buddy Zach, I can't imagine Biden doing that with Stormy or anyone else. Yeah, I can't imagine. I don't want to imagine it, to be honest with you. And exactly, Zach, a catch-22 in this whole situation. And Sapphire, yes, because the head of the Fed was going to testify that the DNA, yeah, the DNAs are perfectly legal. Sleeping with a porn star, believe it or not, is perfectly legal. NDAs are perfectly legal. They're commonplace. People have them all the time. They're protected by law. There is nothing illegal about that. Hey, Robert Govis are watchers that because Merchant told the courtroom that no one was allowed to leave. Robert said this means if it's a guilty verdict, the Merchant plans on taking Trump. Yeah, I agree. I've been saying that. Everybody, every channel I've watched, I didn't know Robert was saying that, but I can tell you straightforward, I have no doubt in my mind that if Donald Trump is convicted in this particular case, there is a real possibility, a real risk of Donald Trump being imprisoned in some way. Everybody says it can't happen. I would never think what's happening right now is going to happen. But don't let that get your blood pressure up. I got some closing comments about that coming up in a little bit. And I think I can put it into a little bit of a perspective. But yeah, I agree, Sapphire. I think Robert's right on the money with that. Okay. All right. Let's get into the meat of what I want to talk about today. We're going to take a look at some of the comments on Truth Social. So let me go ahead and share my screen with y'all. I think this is kind of entertaining. and interesting at the same time. So we're gonna take a peek together about this. Let me get the right setup. Okay, let's go down just a little ways here. Donald Trump, obviously, on his Truth Social platform, he was talking about today that even Mother Teresa could not beat these charges. These charges are rigged. The whole thing is rigged. So let's see what our president had to say about this, and we'll talk about it.
Thank you very much. I would say, in listening to the charges from the judge, who's, as you know, very conflicted and corrupt, because of the confliction, very, very corrupt. Mother Teresa could not beat these charges. These charges are rigged. The whole thing is rigged. The whole country's a mess between the borders and fake elections, and you have a trial like this where the judge is so conflicted he can't breathe. He's got to do his job, and it's not for me, that I can tell you. It's a disgrace, and I mean that. Mother Teresa could not beat those charges, but we'll see. We'll see how we do. It's a very disgraceful situation. Every single legal scholar and expert said this is no case. It shouldn't be brought, and it certainly could have been brought 7 years ago, not in the middle of a presidential election. It was all done by Joe Biden. This judge contributed to Joe Biden, and far worse than that, but I'm not allowed to talk about it because I have a gag order. Far worse than that, by 1,000 times worse than that. The worst I've ever heard, but I can't talk about it. It'll be talked about, but I'm not allowed to talk about it. But it'll be talked about in the history books. What's happening here is weaponization at a level that nobody's seen before, ever. And it shouldn't be allowed to happen. So I'll stay around here. This is 5 weeks. And 5 weeks of really essentially not campaigning, although I took a big lead in the polls over the last few weeks. Something's going on. Because I think the people of this country see that this is a rigged deal. It's a weaponized deal for the Democrats to hit their political opponent. For Joe Biden, the worst president in the history of the United States. He's destroying our country. He's letting millions of people from jails, from prisons, from insane asylums, from mental institutions, drug dealers pour in. Venezuela, if you look at their crime statistics, they've gone down 72% in crime because they're releasing all their criminals into our country because of this horrible president that we have.
You know, I wanted to make a quick comment about that too. I was talking with another friend about that earlier. As many of you know, my girlfriend is Venezuelan, and she had one of her friends fly in to meet her, and I think they stayed the weekend. At any rate, she was telling me that when you hear the president talk about this very subject, that they're emptying out the prisons, the mental wards in Venezuela, it's absolutely true. I heard some reporters on CNN slamming these comments as fake and false. It's very true. In Venezuela, she was saying there's almost no crime whatsoever. Why? Because just like President Trump said, all of the criminals were simply released and said, get out of the country and head to the United States. And that's exactly what has happened.
And then they have a protest of Robert De Niro yesterday. He's a fool. He's a broken down fool standing out there. He got maggot. He got maggot yesterday. He got a big dose of it. But I just want to say it's a very unfair trial. It should have never happened. If it was going to happen, it should have happened 7 years ago. As you know, Bragg didn't want to bring it. The Southern District didn't bring it. The FEC didn't bring it. This judge didn't even let us use the #1 election attorney. He's making the rules. He doesn't know anything about elections. He doesn't know anything about voting and vote counts. He doesn't know anything about this stuff. That's not his profession. We had the leading election expert in the country, Brad Smith, ready to testify. Wouldn't let him do it. They wouldn't let another gentleman who represented, and you know very well, you saw it. It was the worst I think I've ever seen anyone treated on the stand. Bob Costello, wouldn't let him talk about all of the hundreds of emails that he was sent.
Remember that guy? He was at one time, I believe he was going to be, or he actually was Michael Cohen's attorney at one time, and he was kind enough to testify, and this judge ripped him, attacked him, degraded him. Oh, you go ahead and use your own adjective. He was there to tell the jury that Michael Cohen told him a long time ago that he had nothing on Donald Trump. Absolutely nothing. This Costello guy, who of course was representing Michael Cohen at the time, said, hey, if you have anything on Donald Trump, I can make your problems go away because we could make a deal with the prosecution looking into Donald Trump. He's like, I just don't have anything. I have nothing on him. Yet the judge, he wasn't too accommodating for the jury to hear these particular facts.
By a gentleman, another gentleman, who I can't mention because I'm gagged. Every time I speak to you, you ask me simple questions. I'm not allowed to give you the answer because I'm gagged by this judge. But we have a very, very serious problem here. I mean, our country's going bad. And remember, and let me just leave you with this. This is all because of Joe Biden and I don't even think it's him. I don't think he's smart enough to think about it. But it's the people that surround him in the office. They're smart. They're fascists, they're communists, but they're smart. And they're ruining our country. But we're going to win this election. November 5th is going to be the most important day in the history of our country. We're going to take back our country from these fascists and these thugs that are destroying us with inflation and with everything they do, how stupid they are, allowing 15, 16, 17 million people into our country, totally unvetted, totally.
It is ridiculous. You can understand his rage, his anger. I would be exactly the same way. I have no doubt about that. Here's another post President Trump made. Let's listen to this for a minute.
Fox News contributor Andy McCarthy, who is outside the courthouse. You can best give us an idea of what might be going on with that jury. Tell me about jurors.
Well, you know, in New York, juries could be feisty, like New York is feisty. I know, Harris, we spent a lot of time thinking about the other lawyers, the two lawyers on the panel. Yeah. I can tell you, I grew up in the Bronx. I've been a lawyer for more decades than I care to admit to. They eat lawyers for lunch here in New York City. So just because you have lawyers on the jury doesn't mean that they're going to commandeer the jury. Although they could be very influential. We'll just have to see how it plays out.
What worries you most about this case? I know you have some concerns.
I think the idea that you don't have to agree beyond a reasonable doubt on what exactly was the other crime here that Trump was supposedly committing or concealing under circumstances where the other crime is what makes this case possible, right? Because it's what gets them out of the statute of limitations and turns it into a 4-year felony. That's crazy.
And how can that even be approached at this point? The jury is in there. They may come out for a question or two. And I don't even know what they remember about those instructions because that was a long hour of information. It was sleepy time, as Shannon Bream has pointed out. And they couldn't take notes and it wasn't written down. But what do you see happening with that?
Well, I think the good thing about it, Shannon, Harris, is that we'll be getting notes from them if they're hung up on something. So we'll actually have a read on exactly what it is that's confusing.
Yeah, and unfortunately, some of those notes that they're now releasing, I don't know that they are necessarily that great, but we'll see. All right, here's some other comments that President Trump was making here. He said, Jim Trusty, it's the basics of is there any crime here at all? He goes on, as a prosecutor, that judgment has really widened the playing field here by saying there doesn't need to be a unanimous agreement. Absolutely, as we just talked about. Imagine you can be on trial and your jury of your peers, and I use that in quotes, does not have to agree. Outrageous, just unbelievable. So, all right, let's take a look at this.
Thank you so much for joining us. So, Judge, tell us your thoughts in this moment. I don't know, predictions, what we're leaving out. What should we be looking at as this jury is deliberating?
She's not too happy.
I'm flabbergasted by the charges to the jury. You may have already gone through that, but I was doing something else. I have never heard a jury charge like this judge's charge to this jury. We knew the judge was flaky. We knew that he hated Donald Trump, but this judge is beyond the pale. To say that he's going to take dead misdemeanors and raise them to felonies when they don't have to unanimously agree on what that felony is stunning to me. It is absolutely stunning. I want to be clear about something. In New York State, when I was a DA, if I wanted to raise a misdemeanor, and by the way, not a misdemeanor that is expired in terms of the statute of limitations, but if I wanted to raise a misdemeanor to a felony, the only way to do that would be to file a certificate of conviction of another crime. It could be a DWI, it could be a gun possession, to prove that in this particular case, this misdemeanor would end up as a felony, and that is done outside of the presence of the jury, where it's very clear that there's another real convicted case that raises the level of misdemeanor to a felony. This judge is making stuff up as he goes along. This is a kangaroo court. I'll tell you that the level of reversible error on this is stunning. And this judge, unfortunately, is connected to the jury in the sense they see him as this calm, reliable guy who is as out of control in terms of the law, and he doesn't know it, or he's making it up as he goes along, so that this defendant, a former president of the United States, is convicted of dead misdemeanors that by like magic is turned into a felony. This is unheard of, Sandra and John. And I got to tell you one more thing. It's almost like it's a rabbit show. You're going to pull a rabbit out of the hat, but don't look over here. Look at Stormy Daniels. Look at what she said. None of that had anything to do with this. It's all about destroying Donald Trump. And this jury charge has set me over the edge in terms of the law that's being made up as we go along in a felony that we have no idea of. But now it's New York election law, but it could be federal election law too, or it could be a tax violation. And even if he didn't underpay his taxes, it could still be a crime. What is this man talking about?
Yeah, exactly what we were talking about earlier. Basically, the jury has been given permission to choose whatever crime they want. If you think it's a tax crime, agree it's a tax crime, or don't agree it's a tax crime. Just agree there's an extra crime so that we can throw this guy in jail. If you think it was a campaign violation, you go ahead and check that box. The judge is like, I don't really care, just as long as you agree there was another crime committed. That's all I care about.
Right. And then, Judge, there's the other aspect of this, which is the multiple choice aspect of the predicate crime, that the jury does not need to unanimously agree on what the predicate crime was. When you were a judge in New York, did you ever instruct the jury to say, here's a smorgasbord of things that you can find him guilty of, and you don't all have to find him guilty of the same thing. Some of you can find him guilty of one thing or her. Some others can find him or her guilty of something else, and then the remainder of you can figure out something else to find him or her guilty on. Have you ever issued an instruction like that?
It's not done. John, it's not done. And let's talk about the one of three. One is a federal election campaign violation. The other is a tax violation, and the other is the creation of additional records. Federal election campaign.
There we go. That was that third one. It's creation of records, additional records, whatever that is. I mean, he doesn't know what it is. I don't know what it is. You don't know what it is. How's he supposed to defend himself against that? Or it can be a tax dodge. In other words, he went ahead and paid this porn star this money as a tax dodge. Are you kidding me? That's what the jury can determine? Or that it was some type of undescribed campaign violation expense. Really? Really?
Campaign violation. They did not let Brad Smith testify, but you heard David Pecker testify.
And Brad Smith, by the way, that was the so-called expert. I believe he was the head or the one-time head of the FECA, the Federal Election Commission. They were going to put him on the stand, and essentially the judge wouldn't allow it. At least he wouldn't allow it to the point to where he could give any type of meaningful testimony.
Testify about a federal election campaign problem. You heard Michael Cohen testify about that, but Donald Trump in his defense was not allowed to talk about it. But now all of a sudden the jury has the ability to go in and not agree that that is one of the felonies that is necessary to resurrect these dead misdemeanors, but there's no evidence. The defense couldn't defend themselves on it. That's bizarre, John. No one has heard of this. It's like a menu, A, A, column A, B, or C. You don't all have to agree on it. Whatever, folks. This is a kangaroo court. This is unheard of. I'm telling you, I've done this for 32 years. I'm not a federal prosecutor. I'm a state prosecutor.
If you're wondering why she's so upset, well, first of all, this is Judge Jeanine. If you've watched Fox News and you've watched her, you know exactly her personality and how she is. But I want you to understand this. These people love our country. You may not always agree with everything they say. They love America. They love our country. Additionally, this woman is a professional. She's a professional attorney, a professional judge. And I don't know what your line of work is. I don't know what your line of work was. Maybe you're a veteran. Imagine you're doing your job professionally, and yet you see the nonsense that is going on in this court, yet it's going on in your profession. Essentially, all professionals I know would be outraged, would be very upset that the vocation, the profession they love, is essentially being, I don't even know what the word is. It's being destroyed. It's being used for one party to take out another party. It's just aggravating. My background was heating and air conditioning. That's what I used to do all the time. Electrical, plumbing, specifically heating and air conditioning. And I can tell you that when I would see someone doing something inappropriately, not using the proper safety practices, not handling wires in a certain way, not making sure something was not going to burn down a customer's home, I took it personally. And that's exactly what you see the judge doing right now.
I'm not a federal judge. I'm a county judge, just like Mershon. This is New York law. This is my wheelhouse. He is wrong.
Judge, thank you.
Thanks,
And
Judge.
the problem is, okay, guys.
No, finish your thought. Finish your thought.
No, and the sad part about it is this jury is going to think they're doing the right thing based upon a charge that no one has ever heard of.
Let's hope the jury goes home and listens to Judge Jean, but I don't know. They're not supposed to do that, but that's exactly what they have right here. This is like 35 seconds. Let's see what Donald's got
but
here.
There's no evidence. The defense couldn't defend themselves on it. That's bizarre, John. No one has heard of this. It's like a menu, column A, B, or C.
Yeah, exactly. We've heard that. And then, I don't know if y'all were listening to some of the other liberal news media like CNN and some of the other individuals, even a lot of the talent, if I can use the word talent, on their platform is really perplexed. They're not sure exactly what to make of all this nonsense that's going on. They're just as confused as I am.
Howdy, host of Sunday Night in America, Andy McCarthy, Fox News contributor and former assistant U.S. attorney, and Lydia Hu, correspondent for Fox Business. So, Andy, let's start with you. The judge said that the jury has to unanimously believe that Donald Trump committed a crime in order to convict him, but they do not need to unanimously agree on what that crime was. And in what world does that work?
Not in any world I've ever been in, John. What makes a criminal prosecution appropriate in the sense of taking somebody's liberty away, the array of constitutional protections we have. I've always understood them in 20 years of prosecuting cases, and then more years than I care to count analyzing them.
Amen. He's been harping on that all day long, and I don't blame him. I'd be harping on it too. I think that was pretty well it as far as the clips I wanted to play. Oh, this one here, this is the one I was talking about earlier, where Fox News, Donald Trump gets a little upset about this, but you have this one reporter on Fox News. Let's see if they put her name down here. I know he talks about her. Oh, yeah, Shannon Bream. Here's the commentary. Then we'll listen to the video. He goes, I never knew Shannon Bream was so naive in her interview with my representative, Alina Habba. Shannon just suggested that crooked Joe Biden was not involved in my show trial. How stupid. Not only is he involved, he is virtually leading it and all of the other trials as well, meaning his people, because he's not mentally sharp enough to lead anything. Just take a look at the DOJ White House thugs involved and everything else. We talked about that just a minute ago. Biden is incompetent and feels that weaponization is the only way he can win. He is counting on the Shannon Breams of the world to get him there. Bad day for Shannon. And I have to agree. And when I first saw this, I was watching it live. I was thinking, oh, she's just trying to be the devil's advocate and ask follow-up questions. But I don't know. She got a little she went a little bit to the dark side, but I'll let you decide.
Listen, but the Biden administration's not responsible for this trial.
How can you say the Biden administration is not responsible
It's a state.
for this trial?
It's a state trial. It's Alvin Bragg. Whether you think there's a political motive for him, it's not connected to the DOJ. I mean,
Shannon,
the feds passed on these election charges.
Shannon, you should look at how many logs they have of state officials, Letitia James, Fannie Willis, visiting the White House, and then tell me that this is not a Biden trial. I don't
Feds
care.
pass on this case is the point I'm
You're
making.
right. The feds passed on this case. Also, DA Cy Vance passed on this case. And
Years
frankly,
ago, and then it came back.
And Bragg passed on this case. You know when it came back? When he decided to run for office. So tell me how that's not an indication that Joe Biden, who just sent his campaign down here with Robert De Niro yesterday, isn't a part of this. Frankly, any question that we had of that was squashed yesterday. And if you have even more concerns about whether he's involved in this, look at the fact that he is publicizing, literally publicizing for tonight to have a speech if a verdict comes out. That's a sad state of affairs. Meanwhile, our country.
Yeah, you know what? I can understand why she got so upset about this. I don't know if you agree, but if you do agree, put it in the comments and let me know. I really want to hear what you got to say about it. It just seemed like it was over the top. And one thing I like about Alina, she doesn't take anything from anybody. I mean, she's a good lawyer. She's a good advocate. And I think Donald Trump made a good decision in hiring her because win, lose, or draw, she'll come out swinging. And I think that I think she's the perfect spokesperson for that. And this reporter, frankly, surprised me when she was hammering her with these questions. I was just a little surprised by the way it shifted. I don't know. You can tell me if you were surprised or not. All right. One other thing we have to talk about is the actual jury. I don't think this is getting enough attention. This is the thing that we all need to think about. And then I'm going to give you my predictions, whatever that's worth, pertaining to what the exact verdict is going to be pertaining to Donald Trump. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at this together. And y'all tell me if you agree, disagree, whatever. But let's go ahead and take a peek at this. I think I'm going to use this setup, not that one. I'm going to use this one just so we can take a look at this in a bigger setup. So, all right, let's take a look at the jurors. Now, these are the actual jurors. I found this online, and I thought this was a good tool for us to use to essentially see what's going on with this right here. So let me make sure I get it formatted right. There we go. Okay. Juror 1. Now remember, these are the people that's going to decide the case. I can play all day long all of the individuals that I choose to put up to give their opinions. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what their opinions are. The only people that count, frankly, are the judge to a high extent and these jurors. These jurors are exactly going to be the individuals that make this decision, yes or no. So let's go through this, and then I'm going to paint this with some broad strokes here. Juror 1 lives in West Harlem, but originally from Ireland, works in sales and attended some college. Married with no children, gets news from the New York Times. We're talking a liberal magazine or a newspaper. The Daily Mail, they kind of on the fence. They could be conservative. Fox News, a little conservative, and MSNBC. The problem with someone like this, in my mind, is it sounds like a person trying to get on the jury. Let's be honest about it. Most of us do not get that type of balanced news. I mean, one great thing about our country, you can go to Burger King and have everything your way, right? Well, in our country, even the news is Burger King news because you can get the news your way. If you don't like what they're saying on CNN and it raises your blood pressure, all you got to do is pop over to Fox News or some other conservative outlet and they'll make you feel much better, right? Right. That's exactly what's going on. The other thing that sticks out to me is her job is a little bit, it's a convoluted. It's not real clear. Works in sales and attended some college. Not exactly sure what that is going to be. Now, again, if these comments upset somebody, too bad. I just have to tell you the way I see it. Married with no children. I don't know exactly how old she is, but generally speaking, statistically speaking, if she's an older lady without children, and I know there's exceptions, generally these types of individuals are more liberal. That's just the way the statistics bears it out. Number 2, investment banker living in Hell's Kitchen. He follows Donald Trump and Michael Cohen on social media, said he believes Trump has done some good for the country. Okay, the thing I want you to take away from this is investment banker. Statistically speaking, most investment bankers are liberals. Not 100%, but they are. Juror 3 has lived in Chelsea for 5 years, originally from Oregon, corporate lawyer. Remember, there's 2 lawyers on this jury. Most of the time, neither side wants an attorney on the stand. And the reason for that is they are concerned, rightly so, that a juror, or rather an attorney that's a juror, is going to basically hijack the jury and take the case in a direction they don't want to take the case. But understand this, most of the time, painting with broad strokes, attorneys are anybody, they are liberal for the most part. They are generally not conservative, statistically speaking. All right. Also, imagine this. You are a person you're in New York, and you have, I'm going to blow this up a little bit. Let's try this for a minute. You're in New York, and you have to go. I mean, people are going to know who served on this case. How would you like to be an attorney? And these folks are what they call these prestigious higher end law firms. I think they call them white paper law firms, something. I forgot what the term was, but that basically means they are in these huge law firms. Generally speaking, they are liberal. I'll give you a quick example. We all know Morgan & Morgan, and I'm not saying nothing bad about Morgan & Morgan. I've used Morgan & Morgan. I love their attorneys. I was surprised that I liked the firm, but I had a positive experience with the small matter they handled for me. Having said that, clearly, John Morgan is a Democrat. At one time, he was considering running for governor here in Florida as a Democrat. So I just throw that out as an example. And remember, New York City is, by statistics, 88% Democratic, right? So let's move to the next one. Juror 4 currently works as a security engineer, married with children, lives on the west side of Manhattan. Again, security engineer. I had more information about this guy in another, I'm trying to think what else it said in there. Potentially another individual with a Democratic leaning. Let's just go with that. English teacher, not married, doesn't have children. We already said what I think about that. She says she avoids political conversations, but has friends who have strong opinions on Trump. We know what that means. Said she appreciates Trump's candor. Again, I don't know if I believe this or not, but the number one thing, and I used many different sources to check this information out. I can't get it to highlight. She is an English teacher. Some of my own children are educators, and you won't believe this. The biggest chunk of my kids are liberals. I know that that's crazy to imagine, but they are. I'm working on them, but I still love them all. Make no mistake about it. Having said that, teachers are almost always going to lean more liberal. Not 100%, but overwhelmingly, I would say 90+% of educators generally are liberal. That's just the way it is. Juror number 6. And by the way, if you disagree with this, or if you have another point you want to make, please put it in the comments. I'll get to them in just a second. I do want to hear from you. This is designed to be a conversation, not me just up here as a talking head. I'd much rather hear what you think about what I have to say. We don't have to agree on this channel, as I've told each and every one of you many times. So I appreciate all comments. All right, Juror 6, recent graduate who works as a software engineer for a broadcast company, grew up in New York City and lives in Chelsea with roommates, gets news from the New York Times and social media, mainly TikTok. I know what you're thinking, and I'm thinking the same thing. This is probably a liberal person, a Democratic person. It's just kind of written all over the place right here. Juror number 7. And remember, folks, these people come from a pool where the individuals in this pool were 88% verifiable Democrats, registered Democratic voters. And out of that 88%, let's just say out of that 100%, 88% of them are Democrats prima facie, on their face. And this is what we're going through. The individuals chosen from that pool are the individuals that make up this jury. Okay, we all know that. Here's the second attorney, juror number 7, civil litigator, married with children, living on the Upper East Side, reads the New York Times, New York Post. New York Post, obviously a conservative publication, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post. And obviously, they are all left-leaning types of newspapers, magazines, whatever. You guys get the idea there. Said there would likely, said they were likely Trump policies he did disagree with. Okay, just worded funny. All right, juror 8 currently lives on the Upper East Side, retired wealth manager, married with children. Again, bankers, wealth managers. Statistically, they're going to lean to the left. It's just the way it is. Juror number 9 currently lives on the Upper East Side. And by the way, I believe there are 7 women and 3 men, or 6 women and 4 men. I think it's 7-3 split, but we'll double check in a second. Currently lives on the Upper East Side, works in education. Another educator on Trump said he was our president. Everyone knows who he is. Boy, that sounds like a glowing love for your president. Oh, he was our president. Everyone knows who he is. Yeah, that just sounds like a ringing endorsement of President Trump, right? Eesh. Juror 10, living in Murray Hill, works for an e-commerce company. Said he does not follow the news, but listens to podcasts. Does not have a strong opinion on Trump. Does anyone believe that? Does anyone out there believe there are people that don't have a strong opinion, one way or the other? I'm not saying what that opinion is. I'm just saying, does anyone believe that there's people without strong opinions? I'm sure there is. And I'm sure if I look long and hard enough, I could find something that looks like a unicorn. I don't know. Juror number 11 lives in Upper Manhattan, currently works as a production manager on Trump. Said, I don't have strong opinions, but I don't like his persona. How would you like 12 jurors that look just like her? Good luck. I shouldn't be laughing about it, but what else is there to do, right? I'm not going to sit here and cry about it. Juror 12 currently lives on the Upper East Side, works as a physical therapist, married with no children, gets news from the New York Times, CNN, and USA Today. Oh my goodness. I don't know. I just got a case of the legal heebie-jeebies. Oh my goodness. Say one. What do we got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I counted 5 women. Let me try one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So it's 5, 6. There's just 6 men. Well, hang on a second. 5 women, 7 men. Okay, that's 12. All right. Don't want to do complicated math in my head. Not math. Complicated math in my head. I must be on too long. I'm starting to get tongue twisted and tongue tied. Anyway, we get the idea on that, right? Now, let's talk about what this means. If you were Donald Trump, how would you feel about this particular jury? Be straight with me and let me know what you think about that. I just don't think it looks good. That's just my opinion on there. Let me check these comments, then we're going to get right into my opinion on this right here. Yeah, I do think they're going to try to take Trump into custody. That's exactly what that judge has. Was De Niro rant supposed to help the jury decide? Or yeah, who knows? Who knows? Yeah, that Robert De Niro, what an idiot. What a creep. Whoever was the brainchild that decided to roll him out. By the way, it's supposed to be a trial, not a political event. Well, there's no doubt now exactly what's going on, right? All right, Zach. Trump almost always wears a red tie. Was the yellow gold color symbolic? Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. I don't know. I love the judge too. No doubt about it. Zach, there needs to be a stronger word than lawfare. I got a couple strong words I can think of. All right. JR from HVAC ventilation or venting on YouTube. Yeah, no doubt. Now, HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, my friend. Works in sales to pay for college. Yeah, probably. It's a good way to look at it, David. My buddy Sapphire, you either like Trump or hate him. I think most people probably fall in that category, my friend. Yeah, there's also who's Trump. Yep, no doubt. You got a bunch of rhinos nowadays. Okay, Joseph, don't look very good. don't look very good. Looks like they're all Democrats. If they came back to him, I hope you put your address so people can go see them. Well, you know, I'm sure I'm going to talk about that in a second. I'm going to hope. Okay, here we go. Here's my opinions. Let me tell you exactly what I think. I think it's kind of like Joseph was alluding to. We may not be happy with the jury, but I just have to be hopeful that even though he's got a jury full of Democrats, I'm just so hopeful in the attorneys, to be honest with you. I'm hoping that they are outraged by what they see, by this lawfare, by this unfair trial, that the judge is definitely leading this jury to the water of conviction. I don't see how anyone cannot see that. It is so clear. And what is scary is we're living in a world now where even the judge in the DC case and the documents case and the J6 case, the judge there, her mentality is what is scary. And that is Donald Trump's an exception. And even though we're violating his civil rights, we're violating the Constitution by having a de facto political trial, we're engaging in lawfare, their mind is that Donald Trump is so evil, such a threat to democracy, we must do this, whatever it is we must do one time to eliminate him. This is the mentality these people have. It's really just that simple. And it's sick and it's wrong. If they can do it to someone like Donald Trump with all his money, all his power, everything he has at his disposal, you and me, we don't stand a chance. It's really just that simple. You have to make sure you talk to your family, your friends, your kids. If your kids are like my kids, talk to them. You can be respectful to your neighbors, your kids, whomever. If nothing else, send them a link to this video. I'm all about fighting indoctrination. People need to at least hear the other side without the screaming and the shouting and the name calling. They need to understand what is truth and what is false. They need to understand what is right, what is wrong, what is indoctrination and what are facts, and exactly how that all plays in our society today. It's really just that simple. Now, to cut right to it, folks, I'm afraid there's likely to be a conviction. And I'm sorry to tell you that, but that's just how I feel. If we're hopeful, maybe we can have a hung jury. But I think the possibility of an acquittal is probably not really on the table. Not with the jury instruction issued by the judge, not with this particular makeup of the jury, not with an 88% Democratic jury going into this. This judge just really bothers me, these rulings. I think it's pretty obvious how this case is going. They are so desperate to label Donald Trump as a felonious individual. That's all it boils down to. They don't care about the appeal. What they care about is just like the mugshot that sweet Fannie Willis took. They want this man embarrassed, humiliated, and they want to try to change people's minds so they decide not to vote for Donald Trump. That's exactly what this is all about. It is to label him as a felonious individual. President Joe Biden is supposed to go on TV as soon as the verdict is read. And I was thinking for a brief second, maybe if there's a conviction, he's going to do the proper thing and issue a pardon to Donald Trump. That's not going to happen. These people are out to destroy this man. They are trying to take his money, his family, his freedom, his liberty to speak. They are doing everything they can to bring down this man and his family. And it's sad. Imagine a president of the United States having his personal home raided at Mar-a-Lago. Can you believe that? Sure, he may have had classified documents, but he was entitled to the documents. At the time he took the documents, he had the power to say, I hereby declassify these documents. He has that sole and absolute power and authority to do that. It's really just as simple. He didn't have to sign a document outlining everything that he's declassifying. He can just say they're declassified, and boom, they're declassified. What they're trying to hang him on is that, oh, he might have talked to a reporter and said this document, holding it up in his hand, wadded up, is classified. We don't know if it's true. We don't know if it's false, but I do know this. I know President Joe Biden at the time was Vice President Joe Biden had and has classified documents apparently in his home. And he is trying to make money off a book in which he offered classified documents to a ghostwriter to put into the book, to give information pertaining to the book. What do you think about that? Outrageous, isn't it? It's almost absolutely unbelievable, but those are the facts. This two-tier justice system is not justice. This is what they do in Ecuador, Venezuela, Russia. Please recall that video where that one blonde-headed younger lady was like, I want to run for president. I want to try to do things differently. They had a tribunal. They said, your paperwork's not in order. You're off the ballot. They did exactly the same thing de facto to Donald Trump until the U.S. Supreme Court stepped in. Folks, we all need to make sure we're down to vote. If you're religious like I am, I'm a Christian, pray often. Pray with your friends. Pray for your friends and your family and our country, and frankly, our leaders, to give them wisdom to do better than what they're doing now. I will say this. We all have to look at things positively. I am fully convinced that our better days are ahead of us. No matter how bad it seems right now, I can assure you it could always be a lot worse. And I'm fully confident that in the future, things will work out. And if you want to feel better about President Trump's ordeal, let me tell you this before we leave, because I think this will make you feel better. Donald Trump, something looked bad when he was taken off of Twitter. You can't come back to Twitter. So what did he do? He started Truth Social. And his value went from, depending on what reports you believe, 1 billion, 2 billion, 4 billion. Oh, he made another $10 billion. Now, it may have went down a little bit, but by the time I believe now it's probably got another 4 or 5 months left, passes, it may be worth 15 billion, 20 billion, who knows? So he's a very wealthy man. He's going to do very well in the history books, and one way or the other, this mess will be sorted out. But we all have to work together to sort it out. So I hope that kind of ended it on a more powerful note. Friends, I always appreciate each and every one of you taking time to be with me. It humbles me that you take time to listen to what I have to say and to have a conversation with me here today. I always say, keep that mind free, never give up. And until next time, my friends, I am J.R.